Now here are 3 things I did to make sure my family is protected if something should happen to me. And if you have kids or grandkids, you need to hear this too. Now first off, this is not legal advice. I'm just sharing what my wife and I actually recently did for our own estate plan. I actually have it right here. We have 2 small kids. You might hear them running around upstairs. And estate planning is definitely not the most exciting thing to be talking about, but it is one of the most important. And if you are already in retirement, this is something you should be talking to your adult kids about, because if they don't have a plan or an estate plan like this in place and the worst happens, it simply leaves you in a financial and legal bind to kind of deal with afterwards. So the first thing we did is we set up a will and powers of attorney. A will simply lays out who gets what and who's in charge. Without this, the state makes the decision for you. So you don't want to do that. Powers of attorney, these are just crucial. If I'm alive but unable to make decisions, my wife can step in. And if we're both incapacitated, unfortunately, we've named backups to make those decisions for us. The second thing we did is name guardianship for our kids. Now, even if you have an amazing relationship with all your family members, legally naming a guardian is just very helpful. Without it, a court still has to decide who raises your kids and how to take care of them. So those family members still would have to go through that process, and it can be very stressful, expensive, and potentially cause unnecessary family conflict. The third thing we did, or I should say didn't do, is we're not naming our kids as direct beneficiaries of our assets. We have set up a testamentary trust, and what that is simply a trust that would get set up upon our passing, and our assets would flow into that trust. This essentially does 2 things. It ensures our money is going to be used only for how we want it to be for our kids, which is common. Things like health, education, maintenance, and support. That's like a HEMS, they call it in the legal world. So the guardians don't really have to make these financial decisions on their own. It's laid out very easily for them. And the second thing is it protects our kids from inheriting everything, all this assets, too young. In our case, we've kind of said, hey, at 25, they can take control of it, but we don't want to have big lump sums of assets coming to them at 18. Now, why this should matter is if you're in retirement is if you have adult kids, make sure they have this in place. I've seen the opposite situations where this wasn't set up and the worst happens, it can just leave you in that big legal and financial mess. Now, I'm not saying our plan is the exact plan you should be doing, but it is something you should look into to make sure that your loved ones are taken care of and your estate is set up easy for when that time comes, unfortunately. So drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts.